Hey, business storytellers, how's everyone doing? Hopefully, you guys can hear me all right. I'm looking at my guest in the green room. Thumbs up. Audio sounds great. I hope so. Sometimes, what's funny is I'm setting it up on Switcher Studio and it picks up my camera as opposed to my microphone, which I don't know. I don't know why it's doing that to me, but I think I got to figure it out. Even though when I forget to look at that, that can be problem. So today we are live, a special Sunday edition. All the different channels, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, Amazon Live, and Facebook as well. And of course, the podcast version goes to all the different podcast channels. And we want to talk about how do you run an agency. So I have written about that topic at length over on authenticstorytelling.net over the years. When agency, what advantages can it bring, and all those different things. And today's guest wrote the book How to Start a Successful Creative Agency. Andy Stroud will bring him out of the green room here in a second. First, quick note: if you enter and follow and send a screenshot on Amazon Live, you can still win a free copy of the book. We'll send that to you, whether this one or going live. I'm happy to do that. We'll draw that at some point here, but make sure you follow on Amazon. And so let's get him out of the green room here. That's what I was thinking. Oh, Switcher. I produce all my shows with Switcher Studio. Check them out directly from your iPad. Works pretty well for the most part. I can do all these graphics. Everything works, and then I push it over to Restream. Trap one gets you your first month off. Let's get Andy out of the green room. I think he's enjoying the amenities. There aren't any. Haha. Andy, how's it going today?
Great. Amenities were wonderful. Happy to be in your green room.
Yeah, well, you were very particular when it came to your contract. One of those big stars out there. Yeah. So you wrote the book, How to Start a Successful Creative Agency. It's not talking about how you become a good writer or a good designer or anything like that, but how do you, what prompted you to write the book, and why the timing right now? What are people looking for? What prompted you to jump in?
There are a lot of freelancers out there. So by background, I'm a copywriter. There are a lot of freelance copywriters, designers, programmers, and so on. And I know a lot of them are starting to form small agencies. They're finding partners. They're going into business together. The problem is their whole life has been a creative life, if you will. And most of them, like me, don't have a business background. But now all of a sudden you're running a business. And I know a lot of people have challenges, not because of their creative output, but because of the business. So I wanted to talk through some of my experiences having started up 2 successful creative agencies, having worked in bigger agencies before, having been a freelance copywriter solo before. So I've kind of seen the gamut, and I've seen, working with different types of clients and some of the problems that can come up, having employees, contractors, some of the issues that come up there.
And certainly it is different working in an agency or starting your own agency than, working on the deliverables only, I suppose. I don't want to say only or just, because that's a lot of work too. But who should consider starting your own agency? I mean, there is a lot more selling involved too, right? Because, I know when I have a project and I'm not running an agency or anything, but, you have deliverables. And you have to, okay, if this is a deliverable, how much do I want people to pay for it? Yep. So how do people decide that this is the route they want to do it? And if it's just me, is that an agency, or are you talking about building up a freelance business into hundreds of employees across the globe?
Well, you could have hundreds of employees, not necessary though. if you're a freelancer, you're already running a business of one, right? So you are providing estimates, you are doing the deliverables probably yourself, or maybe you're bringing in somebody to help you, a contractor or another freelancer. Then you have to create an invoice and do business with your client. So people have that experience, but then they run into several challenges. So in my case, for example, I was a freelance copywriter for a number of years. I got as busy as I could possibly be. I had some good clients. I couldn't work any more hours. And I thought, if I want to grow, I have to make this something beyond myself. And that was the start for me, because I read, especially on Twitter, some creatives are saying, oh, I'm so busy. I got all these clients coming in. I can't handle it. I'm going to have to get rid of some of them or not do work for some of them. And I'm thinking, are you kidding? I said, come on. If you're that much in demand, that to me is the signal. Maybe it's time to grow.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Very interesting. And I do wonder sometimes how many of the people that say that, it's actually more of a marketing play than anything, right? Oh, I'm so busy, Andy. I'm sorry, I can't take you on any. I can't work. My webinar tomorrow, it's sold out. Give me a break. There's no such thing as sold out webinars. Like that is not. I'm sorry, guys. We cannot have any more viewers of this live stream. We are at the max. So
That's right.
Right? It's a little bit of BS when people say that, I think sometimes. But when you grow, sometimes, right? But
yeah.
And you never say always. I've learned that a long time ago. It's never always. It's or never always, whatever. All those absolutes. So when I start building that agency, though, I think the one phrase you have is, what's a one-off project and an actual client. I know what that actually means, because one-off, right, in my opinion, from my experience, is everything is very custom. Right, like this is how I do it. But tell me about that.
Yeah, so I like to have clients who have an ongoing need for what I do, right? So when I say one-off, that's typically a small business, or somebody comes to you with a particular requirement at that time. But it is literally a project that once you've done it, they have no more requirements. They're done. They got the one thing that they needed. It might have been fun, might have been a good project, might be something you put in your portfolio, but you're not going to get any more business there. And so I see a lot of people online giving advice, how to get clients. If you're a freelance writer or a designer or programmer, and their advice is to, go work for local businesses. The challenge is many of these local businesses are not what I would call professional clients. So marketing isn't something that they really do. They've come to this need, whatever they have, because they think that's how they're going to grow their business at that point. So they think, well, okay, if I have a website, for example, then that would help my business. So they start looking for somebody to build them a website. If you're that person and you build them the website, when that project is over, you have no more client. They got a website, you're finished, that's it, right? In the meantime, though, you've had to learn what this client needs, how they work, what they want, how they do business, et cetera, and you've done all of that to deliver one project. My clients, on the other hand, tended to be bigger corporate clients, bigger businesses, government clients. They had an ongoing need. They had ongoing projects, and I could fulfill those projects for them. And so that's what I looked for clients.
And ongoing need. And the other thing, when you said a little bit of a trigger, lots of trigger words in the book for me, and we'll touch on them in a minute here. But the trigger word for me was building a website and then the project is done. Don't even get me started, guys. Building a website and then we're done. Like, the website is just the starting point. But I know a lot of companies, they treat it like it's the end point. This is we have arrived. The project is done. the website build might be done, but what's the
Right.
website going to do for you if you don't continue with
Right.
whatever? So don't get me started on that. So when you talk about talking with clients about money, and I have a day job, right? I content strategy at VoxPopMe, a market research software platform. I take on a very limited amount of outside work, but I do take on some. And one of the things when it comes to terms that I'm very strict about is if people don't pay at the beginning, unless it's a huge, huge contract, but as you may have guessed, I don't really have the time for it. Like they pay up front. Like I mean, it's so easy, you know. What and I do that because I don't have the time to chase them down.
Right.
I don't have time to keep track of who's paid and who's at net 30 or 60 or whatever. Like if you want to work with me, just pay and then I'll make sure we'll get it done ASAP. What's your advice?
Well, if you can do that, and if that works for you, of course, the number one preference: pay up front. When the money hits the bank, I can start working on your project, right? You find, though, as you work with larger corporate clients, perhaps that doesn't really work. They just won't do it, right? And so you do have to adjust your terms somewhat to what the clients will agree to. The bigger you go up the food chain, the bigger the clients, the more they have standard practices with how they deal with all of their suppliers, right? And most of them, good clients, they have reasonable terms, they have systems in place. So if they say net 30, you get paid somewhere around 30 days, and it's usually not a problem unless something goes sideways, which can also happen. And so you have to adjust. I understand in your case, you don't have time to deal with receivables and all that stuff, and why not get paid up front? One of the things that some people do is they work on retainers. So they'll say as an agreement, so many hours a month, this fixed amount, clients pay at the beginning of the month. So when you pay at the beginning of the month, then the meter starts and you have this many hours during that month. That to me is a great system if you can make that work. We didn't work that way in particular. We did have terms, and we tried to keep them to net 30, and sometimes even giving a discount for net 10 days. So there's all kinds of terms. You have to figure out what works with you and a particular client, but then you also have to be strict about it. If it's net 30, at 30 days, where's the money, right? And you need somebody to chase that down. One of the things, just if you're starting an agency, typically for us, about the third or fourth person that we had in the agency was an admin person, admin finance kind of thing. So that person, once they learned how we like to do estimates, how we like to do invoices and so on, they were also the ones that phoned the client if the payment wasn't there and said, where's the money? So that saved us from doing it, you see. So if you're the creative person, whether you're writer, designer, programmer, and you deal with the client on a creative basis, and everybody has agreed that you'll get paid net 30, and then they don't pay net 30, it's sometimes hard to chase them down, right? It either sounds like you're begging or threatening, right? So the easiest thing I found is have somebody else do it. It's not personal. It's just their job. This person's in charge of finance. Part of finance is collecting the money. And I'm calling you today just asking about when I can expect payment. And that made it easy for us.
I think that's an easy one to forget about, to ask, hire somebody who does some of those admin tasks for you. And I know they can take up a lot of your time, and that's one reason why I like the way I'm doing it. The other thing is, you're absolutely correct. The higher you go up the food chain, the more you kind of have to follow their model. But I have actually worked with big national companies. I guess even they're international even. And, a lot of times nobody really flinches when you say we do half up front and half at the end or something like that. And I guess the bigger it gets, the even half up front is fine, as opposed to all
Yeah.
in the back end, because, you
Yeah.
can just be chasing those dollars nonstop. Now, I know you have a chapter about taking timesheets seriously, and before you jump in there, I'm going to give you my opinion about timesheets. I hate them, and I maybe you'll tell me that you've never heard anybody say they love timesheets. But what I like to do is, I don't like billing by the hour, because why do you pay for 15 minutes? Something I've learned over 10 years.
Mhm.
And I hate timesheets, but I love blocking my time. So
Right.
Angela Profit, when she was on the show, she kind of reminded me how important that is. So I say, here's what I want to get done today, and
Yep.
I'm blocking the time. Don't schedule a meeting. Don't do this. Don't do something
Yep.
else,
Yep.
which in theory is very similar to tracking your time, except I
Yeah.
do it as a goal as opposed to keeping track.
Yep.
But talk about the importance of keeping track of your time and timesheets particularly.
Sure. So first off, everybody, 110% of the population hates timesheets. Okay, I get it. I completely get it. That is not a surprise at all. One of the reasons I think they hate it is because they think they're either being policed or they're being hurried into doing something. So, if I put in 5 hours on my timesheet, later somebody's going to come and tell me, oh, you should have been able to do this in 3 hours, and how come it took you 5? And you have these kind of debates. That's not what timesheets are for at all. Not for me. So first off, in my companies, we never billed by the hour. And in fact, we never told the client our hourly rates either, right? So I'm not going to tell you how much. We had an internal number, but frankly, that's none of anybody's business. We billed by the project. So we would say, let's define the project together with whatever limits there are, with however many rounds of revisions we want to include at this stage, and we will come up with a detailed estimate for you, how much we're prepared to deliver this project for, right? So the onus is on us to define the project with enough detail so that we're all clear on what this project is and also what the limits are. So, if partway through the client comes and says, oh, what about this and that? You just have to look back in the estimate. If it's not in the estimate, if it's a major thing, if it's a tiny thing, and sometimes tiny things come up, obviously, well, you can decide to throw it in if you want, just in the course of the work, and that's fine. But if it's anything that's not defined in the estimate, well, we'll give you another estimate for whatever it is you want now, and be prepared to deliver. Where timesheets come in is when you're doing this estimate, you're figuring out what team is going to work on this. Say if you have, more than 2 or 3 of you, if it's 2 or 3 of you, who's going to work on it. And you're trying to estimate using your own internal numbers, how much you should charge based on how much time it's going to take, plus a premium on top of that, so that the company actually makes money, right? On top of just paying out the salaries. What you want the timesheets for is to later on go back, do this, I don't know, once a month, every 2 months, however you want. Analyze a job, tear it apart. You quoted $20,000 on that job, okay? Go back now and look at the time. How much time, based on your rates, did you put in there? And do yourself a little spreadsheet, right? We quoted $20,000 of time. We did it in, $18,000. Or, whoa, we made a real mistake there, because by our timesheets, we spent $30,000 of time on this. Now, it's not the person who's doing the work, because when you're doing an estimate, if you need to, you should go to the person and describe to them what you want them to do and how long do you think this will take you. Or you can suggest, can you do this in a day or 2 days, whatever seems reasonable. And then they would agree to do the work. So it's an internal discussion so that you can create accurate estimates. And over a period of time, you get a good handle on how long things take, right? So, if you're a designer, you're designing a logo, how long should you allocate for first versions of however many options you're going to show? So you might say, I need 3, 4, 5 days for that. For real exploration, that's how much time. So you can put that into the estimate, right? You just want to make sure that you're estimating correctly, and you're not there to police people. It's not like, you know, if somebody's goofing around all day and puts something in their timesheets, well, it's going to be evident pretty soon that the work hasn't been done, and yet somehow there's a whole day of time in there. What happened? Yeah, in that case, you are sort of policing. The only other 2 times where I think you really do need to look at timesheets as things are progressing is if your agency is starting a new type of project. So you haven't done this type of work for, it's close to what you usually do. You would like to do this, but you really haven't done that job before. So the first time you do that, you're doing your best estimate. It's a guesstimate is what it is. You're guessing, right? Based on your experience. When that's over, you really want to have a look at it, because if you want to do that type of project again and again, you want to get it right at the beginning so that you know you're estimating appropriately. And the other time is when you're bringing on new staff. So, you've had the interview, you've hired this person, this designer, and you've made some assumptions about how they work, but you really don't know. Okay. And then first time you work together, you sit down and you talk about what needs to be done. And as part of that conversation, you ask and you determine how much time do you think you're going to need, and so on. And so then you're going to know, does this person work faster than you thought, slower than you thought, or about the way you thought? So now you have a good notion of how long it takes this person to turn out whatever the piece of work is. And that, I think, the timesheets are for management, or for whoever creates the estimates. That's why I think you want them. Most of the time, by the time you get to look at it, timesheets are history, right? They don't predict the future. They show you history. And so you go back there to review history, and so that your future, you understand what you're doing and how much time it's going to be required. But back to your point, we never quoted by hours, and we never told the client, oh, it's going to take us this many hours. We defined a deliverable, and we had different dates when we would present, so we break down our projects into different presentations, perhaps at different times. And that goes back actually to billing, just for a second. Yeah, if you can get a down payment to start the project, and then billing, by deliverables, especially on a really big job. So if you're doing $100,000 job, you don't want to wait to the end to get the first dollar. You want to start getting paid along the way. You have expenses along the way. You need to keep the cash flow flowing, right? And the big clients understand that. They get it. Right, so there's no problem there. They might flinch if you said, I need the 100,000 all up front. They might not be that comfortable there, but sure, to give you 25% of it up front, a reasonable ask, right? And that at a certain point, deliverable, another 25% until you're done. So that's how we use timesheets and how it sort of relates to billing.
And, at the end of the day, we only have so much time to do all the different things we need to do. And that's kind of what it comes back. But I'm glad to hear that. The other thing is when it comes to scope, and I was thinking of, some of the examples I run across, I always write up the scope, and sometimes it changes. And I'm very willing to trade things, right? Oh, if we're not in this, we can do that or whatever. But it's very important to understand what's expected and what you do. Now, in your book, you talk about the importance of a project manager, which is interesting because, having a good workflow, it's actually very helpful. And I mean, I noticed that the other day, one piece of the workflow was broken because technology was broken. And actually somebody said to me, oh, I can just imagine how your workflow is currently screwed up. And it really, truly was. Like, you had to figure out how to detour. And of course, having a project manager can help us. But at what stage do you need a project manager? Like, how many people, what size, I guess, Or is it just by, I mean, I could use one by myself, honestly, some days.
Yeah. So, different words for people, different terms, right? So when I said earlier, we hired sort of an admin finance person, if there's only 5 or 6 of you, for example, that person also becomes your project manager, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because, there probably isn't that much admin to be done. So that person kind of runs your whole operation. So you can call them an operations manager, you can call them whatever you like, right? But really, they're the ones to sometimes remind you, a day or two before, hey, we're doing the presentation next week, next Wednesday morning, make sure, we're all ready and so on. They're the ones to stay on top of if you're working with any outside suppliers or you're expecting some kind of deliverable from them. If you're booking a recording session somewhere, just to confirm that their session is booked and the talent will show up and all of that stuff, right? Yeah, the more you grow, the more a project manager is important, because you have many projects ongoing, and you want the people working on the project to be clear what they're doing, and they're not having to manage themselves too much. And project managers also there to make sure when, say, a designer is finished with one project and now they're available to do something else, to be on another project, that they're not sitting around for 3 days because you forgot about them, you haven't assigned them any work, and they're wondering what they're supposed to be doing. So the project manager keeps track of the different projects and keeps track of people's workloads too. Conversely, a new project comes in and creative director or somebody, one of the principals says, oh, I'm going to get so-and-so to do it. And I think, no, wait a minute, you can't get them. They're blocked up for the next 3 days. They can't do it. So we need to have a quick talk, figure this out. Who's going to do this? How's it going to get done? Right. So there's all of that. And when you're really small, it's easy. As you grow, it's a skill. It's a real skill. It's a delight. I'll tell you, it's a delight to have great project managers.
It absolutely is. And of course, now even when as you're growing, the other thing you could think about, there is some fantastic technology tools. Not to just pick on one, but I currently use Trello. There's plenty of others, but I basically have workflows set up in Trello, right? So every new project that fits into a certain category, it's already in there. So I can't forget what's the next step. And sometimes, I make a decision that a step is not needed for one reason or another. But those things are so helpful. Copy and paste. The more I can make those things easier. Now, you talk about presentation to clients, and I want to circle back in a little bit about it when it comes back to time and cost. So I'm saying that out loud so I don't forget it. Hopefully, we will see. But presentation to clients is interesting. So you talk about, presenting to clients, pitching and whatnot. And I struggle with that. And here's the reason why. Because part of the value that I bring is the strategy, right? I'm not just a copywriter. I'm a strategist. Does that mean I can copywrite? Yes, I can. Does that, think about what we're doing today. We're doing a live stream. There's all kinds of strategy involved with a live stream. There's all kinds of technical know-how, right? As you noticed, we had some technical issues early on. Not uncommon, just a question on where something will go wrong. So all these different things. So how do I draw the line to not giving them in a presentation what I would like them to pay for? You know what I mean? And how do I find that balance?
I'm not sure. I guess when I wrote about presentations, today with technology, it's tempting, to mail it in, as it were. And the world, I hope, has temporarily changed. I'm fairly confident that we're going to get back to maybe a new version of normal, but much more normal than we are right now. And so I'm always a fan of being face to face as much as possible where it makes sense. It doesn't make sense for everything. We have telephones, we have text, we have all this wonderful technology now. Makes our lives easier in many ways. But I think people forget the emotional value of being face to face, or even talking so that you can hear a voice. You know, here we are talking, you hear voice, you get picture, and so on. To me, much richer experience than sending text back and forth or emails back and forth, right? Mm-hmm. Presentations are important, and we build in the cost of the time that it takes to do them. We build them into our estimates, right? And so in some cases, we would call them working meetings, strategy meetings. So in your case, for example, if you're doing strategy for a client, at some point, you're going to communicate that to the client, and you're going to get some feedback from the client as to what they think about it, right? And there might be a little bit of back and forth, right? To me, that's like a working session. You have done a whole lot of work on their behalf, and now you communicate that to them, and there's going to be some back and forth. So you could have easily a 1 hour, 2 hour sometimes meeting, and you could take away some feedback, and based on that feedback, you might do some revisions, or you might do some additions, whatever it is, and the project rolls on, right? So we would build that into our estimates. We would charge for that. It was never a problem. It really wasn't. And here's one way to think about that. When your client is in that room, they're getting paid. It's part of their job. Part of their job is to meet with you, right? That's part of their job. They get paid. Mm-hmm. Why wouldn't you get paid? I mean, to us, it was never even a question. And I've had this from other creatives that say, well, do you charge for meetings? Of course we do. What do you think? Everybody gets paid. Everybody in that room is getting paid, right? So that's how we think about it. And in the book, I sort of laid out where I think it's critical to have meetings, and others in between, you can do it however you want.
I'm also a fan of face-to-face, but I will say this whole live streaming, I mean, it's never made this content creation and content production easier, I mean, think about it. You and I talked on Friday, and here we are going live on 5 channels, and the podcast version comes out in a little bit. So, you know, that wouldn't be possible. I also have, that's a little bit of a trigger word for me too, you know, if everybody else gets paid in the room and I don't get paid. So you and I connected on Twitter, and I want to be very clear about that. Andy didn't pitch me as far as I know. I think I saw him and I said, hey, you want to come on the show? Yeah. And that's right. Like, I invited you on the show, but I get a lot of PR pitches. And my response to PR pitches, usually, unless I'm really hurting with people on the show, but as you know, I'm not, right? Because this was the only open slot in a while. Your book is out. I wanted you to come on the show. I always write back, here's the fee. And it's literally an administrative fee. It's not thousands and thousands of dollars. It's really just for the time, if you think about it.
Yep.
And I do that because, you know, they get paid to email me. Why wouldn't I get paid to participate in that transaction? So very much on board with that. I want to mention a quick thing about the book, and I hope everybody checks it out. It is the featured item on the Amazon carousel. Not sure if we are streaming on his page as well. Sometimes it does that and sometimes it doesn't, but it's streaming across Amazon. What I really like about the book, Andy, first of all, there's a lot of good stuff in it, but it's also laid out in a way that makes it easy to read. So I do appreciate that. Thanks for not having ongoing paragraphs. Drives me crazy when people do that. Thank you for using bullet lists. And 325 pages still. So a lot of stuff in there for you to learn from. Now, tell me about time and cost. Over the years, I've gotten a lot of pushback to this concept. You mentioned it earlier. Every hour I spend, right, needs to be counted for something. So if I spend $30,000 of my time for a $15,000 project, that's not a good That's not good. But
Right.
how do you determine that? How do you convince the, oh, that's not how you should calculate it, naysayers?
Well, you have to calculate it somehow. I
Right.
mean, right? You have to provide an estimate. I mean, unless, okay, let's just back away from that for a second. We could pretend we're going to work like lawyers, and lawyers work by the hour still. Okay, so they'll tell you, or high-end consultants, right? So, I talked to some high-end consultants, Price Waterhouse and so on. This guy he bills out at $750 an hour, right? And after you recover from that, then you think, wow, okay, if I want to hire this guy, that's what I'm going to pay. And they don't tell you how many hours either, whatever it takes, right? Same with lawyers. God forbid you hire a lawyer just on an ongoing running hourly basis. And so they don't care how long it takes, because every second they're going to bill you for. And that's just the way they tend to work. Our business, very few people want to work that way. And frankly, me as the vendor, I don't want to work that way either. The reason is, if I worked that way, I would have endless arguments with clients, right? They would say, oh, I thought that was only going to take 5 hours, but you billed me for 20, right? And I will say, well, yeah, it took 20 hours. So this open-ended, bill by the hour, forget about it. On the other end, you get people saying, oh, you should bill what they call value billing. How much is this, whatever it is you're doing, how much is it worth to the client? And somehow you're going to calculate a percentage of that value, and that's what you're going to charge them, right? I personally, sounds great, could never make it work on that basis. However, if you bill by the defined project, so I'm going to tell you this project, and with all my description and definitions, $10,000. I didn't tell you how long it took me, and I didn't tell you how much I charged by the hour. I just said, basically whatever's in this box, $10,000, right? And read the description, and agree to it or not. And I might get some pushback. They might say, "Oh, gee, that's more than we have in our budget. We have $7,500 in our budget." So then I would say, "Well, okay, let me look at this and make it a $7,500 project, not the same $10,000 project. You've only got $7,500. That's fine. We can, trim this back, maybe this phase or whatever we can leave to another time. But for now, here's what we can accomplish for $7,500. And again, that is a version of value billing without going through all the pieces that the people who are promoting that notion try to go through. I'm not there to determine how much value what I'm doing is to the client. I have no idea, right? And frankly, most clients have no idea either, right? If you try the value billing approach, part of it is to determine the value of whatever it is they're trying to do. So this project, what's the value to the client? They don't know, most cases, and
Right.
even if they did, why would they tell you, right? Why would they tell you the value of something? You could build, for example, a very simple e-commerce website that you could put together, say, in 2 weeks, 3 weeks maybe. And the value of that is, for the client, they're going to make millions and millions of dollars selling their products on this fairly simple website. Easily done, right? They're not there to share the profits with you. They're there to hire you to do this project in a good way and at a decent price that you've agreed on, and that's it. And if the other way you could work at it, if you like, and it's an interesting way, if you think you want a piece of the action, which value billing somehow implies, is you say to them, I'll build you the website for free. I want a commission on every sale. right? So you become you become a salesperson. And I know a programmer who's done that, right? So the client wanted, they're introducing a whole new line of products. They wanted a website. They couldn't afford it. He said, no problem. We'll build it for you out of our own pocket, and we'll work. And this company had commission sales people. We'll just be another commission salesperson, and we think our website will bring in loads of sales, and that's how we get paid. Try that.
Awesome. So much interesting stuff, guys. Check out the book. It is available on Amazon, How to Start a Successful Creative Agency. It's also in the carousel. Andy, thanks for joining us today. Thanks for making the time on the special Sunday live stream edition. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of the Business Storytelling Podcast. Please rate, review, and recommend our show to your friends and coworkers. Until next time.